Once again, class 10 videos. Same lesson, the life processes, but a new topic, that is the respiration. Today, we are going to concentrate on the broad classification of the respiration with definition. Respiration, it is a process performed by the organism after the photosynthesis or after digestion. What happens in photosynthesis? The food is formed in the form of the glucose of the starch, and what happens in the digestion? Food gets simplified in the form of the glucose or the amino acid or the fatty acid. The next process is that how the organism gets the energy. The process by which the organism gets the energy is actually called the respiration. What is respiration? It is a biochemical process which releases energy from oxidation or from breakdown of the food. It is called the respiration. Definition: it is a biochemical process which releases energy. When the energy is released, the energy is released from the process. The process is called the respiration. The energy is released by the oxidation process or by the simple process. It is called the process which is completed in the absence of oxygen or in the presence of oxygen, but this process is completed to give energy. So, energy that we get from the food only. So what we write here, it is a biochemical process which releases energy from food. Must remember, two processes already completed. If it is plant, the photosynthesis is over, and if it is animal, then digestion is over. This process is just afterward the photosynthesis or after the digestion. Okay. So what is the respiration? It is a biochemical process which releases energy from food. Food that we get, that we eat. It is the food that we eat. It goes for the process of digestion, or plants prepare the food, and that food, after the reaction, after the process, it gets converted into energy, and that energy is required for all the body. So this is a simple definition of the respiration. Now we have to move what are the various types of respiration. Types of respiration. Basically, respiration is of two types. Okay, it is a complex process. It is a long process also, and basically we are able to classify the respiration in two parts. There are two types of respiration, and that classification is on the basis of the use of oxygen and not use of the oxygen. If the oxygen is used or the oxygen is not used. On the basis of this, we are able to categorize the organisms in two types also. Organs who use oxygen for respiration, organs who are not using the oxygen for the respiration. So on the basis of the needs of oxygen, we are able to classify the respiration in two types. First is called the anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration. Definitely, the next one is the aerobic respiration. Aerobic is the word related with the air. It means the respiration which is completed in the presence of air is called the aerobic respiration, and anaerobic in the absence of air. The respiration which is completed in the absence of air is called the anaerobic respiration. Then how can we define it? We define it a respiration or a biochemical process which is completed in the absence of oxygen is called anaerobic respiration. So what is anaerobic respiration? Respiration which is completed in the absence of oxygen. So oxygen is not needed here. If oxygen is not needed here, then what happens? The energy is formed, but it is formed in the absence of oxygen. Now what happened here? The process somehow half process is similar in both the type of the respiration. What is the half process? The process, it gets the various steps. The first step, it gets convert the glucose into pyruvate. Glucose is the carbon 6 molecule, and in this process it gets converted into carbon 3 molecule. So what happened in the first process, that is recognized here as the various properties or various part of the aerobic respiration. The carbon 6 molecule, and what is carbon 6 molecule? That is C6. C6 is the carbon 6 molecule. C6, H12 and O6, that we call the glucose. Carbon 6 molecule, that is glucose, get converted into carbon 3 molecule. Carbon 3 molecule, and that is called the pyruvate or pyruvic acid. Okay, it is very simple to understand what happened. The carbon 6 molecule, 6 is the number of carbon present in the molecule, that is glucose. C6, it gets converted into carbon 3 molecule, and this process performs in the cytoplasm only. So where this process is performed, this process is performed in cytoplasm. Cytoplasm, you know very well where the cytoplasm is present in the cell. Cytoplasm, the fluid present between the nuclear membrane and the plasma membrane. So this process is performed in the cytoplasm, and we call this process as glycolysis. This process is called glycolysis. Okay, you have to remember this word, glycolysis. So what happened here? The first process that is going on, it is completed in the cytoplasm, and as a result of this process, the carbon 6 molecule that we call the glucose gets converted into carbon 3 molecule. Carbon 6 ka half is 3. It means carbon 6 molecule gets converted into 2 carbon 3 molecule that we call the pyruvic acid or pyruvate. And what happened in the next step? After this glycolysis is going on, then what happened? This pyruvic acid, that is the carbon 3 molecule, gets converted into a 2 end product is formed here, that is called the ethanol and carbon dioxide into ethanol. And what is the formula for ethanol? That is C2H5OH and carbon dioxide. Okay, but only these 2 substances not formed. One more substance is formed, and that is called the energy. So we write it here: ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. Total how much energy is formed during this process? Total 2 ATP of energy. 2 ATP of energy is formed. 2 ATP of energy is formed. So what is the special character of this process? Okay, must listen carefully. It is the process which is completed in the absence of oxygen. So we call it the incomplete oxidation. What happened actually? Incomplete oxidation of food. What is going on here? Incomplete oxidation of food. Or oxidation, oxygen is not used here. So we call it the incomplete breakdown of food. Incomplete breakdown of food. Okay, it is clear what is anaerobic respiration. A respiration which is completed in the absence of oxygen, first thing. Second, it is completed in cytoplasm. The third, this process which is completed in cytoplasm is called the glycolysis. Okay, afterwards, the carbon 3 molecule, that is glucose, gets converted into carbon 3 molecule. Carbon 6 molecule, that is the glucose, gets gets converted into carbon-3 molecule that is called the pyruvic acid or the pyruvate. And what happened next? This pyruvic acid gets converted into ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. Total how much energy is formed in the process? Total 2 ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That is the energy currency of cell. So total 2 ATP energy is formed during this process. And this process is actually the incomplete breakdown of the food. So that is a definition and peculiar characteristic of the anaerobic respiration. But how we explain this reaction with the help of the chemical equation? Because it is a chemical process only. So simple, the way by which we are able to explain the process with the help of the chemical equation. Okay, chemical equation for anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration. Okay. Now, what is the substance we get here? We get here C6H12O6. Okay. What happened with it? First, see the word. First, we see the word equation. What is there? That is the glucose. Glucose is the carbon 6 molecule. This carbon 6 molecule gets converted into pyruvate or pyruvic acid. This is actually carbon 3 molecule. Okay. And this process is performed in cytoplasm. And this is called glycolysis. What happened next? This pyruvic acid gets converted into ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. This is the simple word equation for the process of anaerobic respiration. We explain it in the form of the simple chemical equation also. Same process we have to write in the equational form. What happened here? C6H12O6 in the absence of oxygen. In the absence of oxygen, because it is an anaerobic process, so in the absence of oxygen, gets converted into C2H5OH plus CO2 plus energy. This energy is about 2 ATP. This is ethanol and this is glucose. Okay, so one molecule of glucose gets oxidized to form 2 molecules of ethanol. So this is the balanced chemical equation for anaerobic respiration. Now let's move towards the aerobic respiration, the second type of the respiration. That is called the aerobic respiration. Simple, the respiration which is completed in the presence of air. Presence of air means presence of oxygen. Now one more thing. In which organisms anaerobic respiration is present? Because during the process of anaerobic respiration, very less amount of energy is formed. Only 2 ATP of energy is formed. It is very small amount. It means this anaerobic respiration is occur only in the lower organisms such as bacteria, etc. They bear the process that is called the anaerobic respiration. Now we are talking about the higher animals, higher organisms, higher plants and higher animals. The process which is performed, the respiration process which is performed in higher organisms is called the aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration. I already told you aerobic means the word is air here. Air means the respiration which is completed in the presence of air. So first we have to write the definition of aerobic respiration. A respiration which is completed the presence of air. Presence of air is called aerobic respiration. The respiration of aerobic air. In the presence of air, it means aerobic respiration. Definitely, it produces large amount of energy, so it is a complex process also. What happened previously? We see in the process called anaerobic respiration, the carbon 6 molecules get converted into carbon 3 molecules. That process is similar here also. What happened in the first step? The carbon 6 molecule get converted into carbon 3 molecule. Okay, in simple words, we are able to write that glucose gets converted into pyruvate or pyruvic acid. Now, it means the first step is common here. So, this process occurs. In cytoplasm, and this is called the glycolysis. Okay. Next step, it is for this process completed in cytoplasm, and it is called glycolysis. There is no confusion here. Okay. In the first step, what happens? The glucose gets converted into carbon 3 molecule, that is called the pyruvate or pyruvic acid, and that process is performed in cytoplasm, and this process is called the glycolysis. But what happened in anaerobic respiration? This pyruvic acid gets converted into ethanol and the carbon dioxide. Okay, but this does not happen in the aerobic respiration. The process is not stopped here. What happened in aerobic respiration? This carbon 3 molecule gets entered in mitochondria. Okay, this carbon 3 molecule which is formed here that we call the pyruvic acid or pyruvate, it gets entered in mitochondria. It means the mitochondria is the second place where the process is completed. Okay, it means in aerobic respiration, 2 steps are there. One is called the glycolysis and one is called the Krebs cycle. Okay, so what happened here? This carbon 3 molecule gets enter or only enter carbon 3 molecule enters in mitochondria, and as we know that what is the mitochondria? Mitochondria is called the powerhouse of the cell. And what happened in the mitochondria? The complete oxidation of food. Oxygen is needed here. Here the use of the oxygen is defined. So what happens? This pyruvic acid gets entered in the mitochondria, and next step of the respiration performed inside the mitochondria. What happened in the mitochondria? In mitochondria, complete breakdown of food, in mitochondria. Food breakdown completely in the presence of oxygen. So it is aerobic respiration because oxygen is here. In mitochondria, the pyruvate gets react with the oxygen, and as a result of this reaction, first this process is called the Krebs cycle. The process performed in Mitochondria is called Krebs cycle. Krebs is the name of the scientist who explained this process. So this process is called Krebs cycle. And what happened in this process? In this process, as the end product, pyruvate gets converted into carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide and water. And with lots of energy is also there. Carbon dioxide and water. And energy. Now, what amount of energy formed? In totality, we know that in the process of glycolysis, the 2 ATP of energy is formed. Okay. Then what happened at the end of the aerobic respiration? Total 38 ATP energy is formed. It means in mitochondria, near about 36 ATP of energy is formed. Okay. So what happened? The amount of energy formed after the process is 38 ATP. 38 ATP. So what is the aerobic respiration? Aerobic respiration is a respiration which is completed in the presence of oxygen. It has 2 steps. One is called the glycolysis, one is called the Krebs cycle. Glycolysis is the process which is completed in cytoplasm. And the Krebs cycle is the process which is completed in the mitochondria. As a result of the process, the 38 ATP of energy is formed with release of carbon dioxide and water. So this is complete summary of the aerobic respiration. Must remember, the anaerobic is the incomplete breakdown of the food. It is complete breakdown of the food. It is complete breakdown of the food. Complete breakdown of food. These are the 2 processes that we call the types of respiration. Let's move towards the equation for the respiration. Equation for aerobic respiration. Equation for aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration. Now, first is the word equation. Word equation is actually the summary of the total process. Okay, what happens is glucose, that is called the carbon 3 molecule. Carbon 6 molecule gets converted into, that we call the glucose, gets converted into, I may write it again, glucose, that is carbon 6 molecule, gets converted into pyruvate or pyruvic acid. Pyruvic acid. This is carbon 3 molecule. This is carbon 6 molecule. Simple process that was already performed in the anaerobic respiration, that is in cytoplasm. And this process is called glycolysis. But this process is not stopped here as in the anaerobic respiration. This process is proceeded forward in mitochondria. Mitochondria, which is called the powerhouse of the cell. Why it is called the powerhouse of the cell? Because of the complete oxidation of the food. And this process is called Krebs cycle. I already told you, Krebs is the name of the person who invented this process. So in the honor of the person, we give the name the Krebs cycle. What happened in this Krebs cycle? The food gets oxidized to form carbon dioxide and water and energy. Here, this process is called oxidation. The process which is performed in mitochondria is called oxidation. Why? Because it is completed in the presence of oxygen. Now, this is the word equation. Now, move towards the chemical equation. C6H12O6 reacts with oxygen in the mitochondria to form carbon dioxide, water, and nearly 38 ATP of energy. 6 carbon dioxide, 6 water is the part of the oxygen. What is this? This is the glucose. This is oxygen. Then carbon dioxide, water and energy. So this is the aerobic process in the presence of oxygen. This is completed. It is called the aerobic respiration. So these are two types of the respiration. If I ask, what is the difference between aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration? This is most important question from this topic. The difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. They are able to explain it or not? I think you are able to explain the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. But most important thing, when you are going to write the difference, you have to make two columns. One for the one for the aerobic respiration and second is for the anaerobic respiration. And you mention the number of the differences is depend upon the question, the marking of the question. How much mark that question is obtained. Only depend upon that only how much points you have to mention there. But broadly, what is the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration? The first, aerobic respiration is a respiration which is completed in the presence of oxygen. Anaerobic respiration is a respiration which is completed in the absence of oxygen. A second, in aerobic respiration, the two steps are there. One is called the glycolysis and one is called the Krebs cycle. But in anaerobic respiration, only one step is there that we call the glycolysis. In aerobic respiration, the process is started in cytoplasm and ended in mitochondria. But in anaerobic respiration, process starts in cytoplasm and gets ended in cytoplasm only. As the end of the process, in aerobic respiration, total 38 ATP energy is formed. But in the anaerobic respiration, only 2 ATP of energy is formed. As the end product in anaerobic respiration, carbon dioxide and water is formed. As the end product in anaerobic respiration, ethyl alcohol or ethanol and water is formed. Okay. The aerobic respiration has the complete breakdown of the food, a complete oxidation of food is going on. But what happened in anaerobic respiration, that is incomplete breakdown of the food. One more broad difference is that the anaerobic respiration occurs only in the lower organisms such as the bacteria, but aerobic respiration occurs on the higher organisms such as the plants, and we humans, we are carrying the same process that is called the aerobic respiration. But one more condition is there that we call the anaerobic respiration in humans. Anaerobic respiration in humans. Respiration in humans. I already told you, in humans, aerobic respiration is there because oxygen is very much important for survival of us. Oxygen is required for the process of respiration on the earth. But how the anaerobic respiration is going on in the process? This anaerobic respiration occurs sometime in our body when we do the more physical labor. आप याद करो, अब बहुत तेजी से कभी दौड़ करके आ रहे हो, आपने स्कूल में, रेस में, हर्डल्स में किसी ने पार्टिसिपेट किया एंड यू आर नॉट एन एथलीट. तुम एथलीट नहीं हो, तुम हमेशा दौड़ते नहीं हो, यू आर नॉट इन द प्रैक्टिस फॉर रेसिंग. ओके, जब आप बहुत दौड़ कर आते हो तो व्हाट हैपन? ओके, या फिर तुम एक पहाड़ क्लाइंब करते हो, ठीक है, एक पहाड़ चढ़ना है, पेड़ पे चढ़ना है, एक दिन पूरे दिन खड़े होकर ढेर सारा काम करना है. देन व्हाट हैपन? दिस क्रम्स स्टार्ट इन योर मसल्स. आपका मसल्स जो है उसमें क्रम्स आ जाते हैं, आपको मसल्स में दर्द होने लगता है, ठीक है, बहुत सारा पेन होने लगता है. दैट इज द कंडीशन when anaerobic respiration occur in our body. What happens? Our body needs the oxygen. But when we do the physical labor or hard work, the supply of oxygen is lacked in our body. At that time, the oxygen is not supplied properly in all the cell of the body. And what happens if the less amount of oxygen is supplied in our cell? The process of oxidation is not completed properly, and we are producing very less energy in our muscles, and we are doing the laborious work where the energy is needed. तो our body बहुत सारे एनर्जी खर्च कर देता है और उतना एनर्जी प्रोड्यूस नहीं कर पाता है. ओके, why? Because we are not getting the proper amount of oxygen. At that condition, the substance which is formed in the body is called the lactic acid. What happens actually when the oxygen supply is inadequate amount of oxygen is supplied, then the glucose get converted into lactic acid, and due to which we must feel some pain or cramps in our muscles for few hours after the completing our physical work or the labor or the exercise or climbing the mountain, etc., etc. After that, our muscles get relaxed and we are feeling somehow better as compared to the earlier condition. Okay, आप दौड़ कर आते हो, you get tired, or you have pain in your muscles, आपके पैर बहुत दुखते हैं, you fall on the ground, ground में गिर जाते हो, and you start breathing like anything. It means your body needs more oxygen. Oxygen you breathe from your nose is insufficient at that time. And what happened at that time? The lactic acid is formed in your body. This is a special condition that occurs in human's body or animal's body also. That is called the respiration or anaerobic respiration in the muscles of the human. So what is the peculiarity of this? It takes place in our muscles. It takes place in our muscles. But not all the time. हमेशा नहीं. Not all the time. कब होगा हमारे मसल्स में? ड्यूरिंग द विग्रस फिजिकल लेबर और एक्सरसाइज ना, our muscles consume more oxygen. Okay, what happens during vigorous physical labor such as running, fast running, or climbing the mountain. Okay, all this time our body consumes more oxygen at the time of the vigorous physical labor or exercise. Our body consumes more oxygen. But because we are doing the hard physical labor, okay, more oxygen because we are doing the hard work, and hard work needs more energy to consume more oxygen for energy or for more energy. But what is our physical condition at that time? Our blood cannot supply adequate amount of energy to the cell. Okay, but our blood cannot supply adequate amount of energy. Adequate is a sufficient amount of energy to our cells. Okay, this is the reason why this process is going on. So what happens? So during this, lactic acid is formed. In our muscles. Okay, and this lactic acid, and with the release of very little bit of energy, it means nearly about 2 ATP of energy. Lactic acid is formed in our muscle with a small amount of energy. This is 2 ATP. Small amount of energy. We are doing the physical labor, we need more energy, but in this condition, the less energy is formed in our body, and also the lactic acid is formed in our body, and this lactic acid accumulates in the muscles. Okay, and this accumulation of lactic acid, due to the accumulation of the lactic acid, the cramps occur in our muscles. What happens? This lactic acid gets accumulate in our muscles, due to which due to which the pain, okay, that is called the cramp, due to which the muscle cramp occurs. We are taking the rest. After the rest, lots of the energy, we breathe in with mouth, with the nose, like that, and then when the muscle get the more energy, the muscles relax and the pain gets rid. So that is about the anaerobic respiration in the muscles of our body. To summarize the complete process, the process we have studied is called respiration. This is the process which is performed in the cells of bodies of organisms after the photosynthesis or the digestion. Because after the digestion and photosynthesis, our body gets the nutrients or the food that we call the food or the glucose. Okay, so this process is occurs in the food or the nutrients that is photosynthesized or that is digested in the body of organisms. So we are going to summarize. We are going to study the respiration. Okay, you know very well. Respiration is the process of breakdown of the food to energy. It is divided into two parts. Okay, one is in the presence of oxygen, one is in the absence of oxygen. The process which is completed in the presence of oxygen is called the aerobic respiration. The process which is completed in the absence of oxygen is called the anaerobic respiration. As a result of the aerobic respiration, carbon dioxide, water and energy is formed. Okay. At the end of the anaerobic respiration, ethyl alcohol or ethanol and water and energy is formed. The 38 ATP is formed in aerobic respiration, 2 ATP is formed in anaerobic respiration. The difference in the energy level also. This occurs in the lower organs, this occurs in the higher organs. But sometimes in the muscles of animals. One process is going on. That process due to inadequate amount of oxygen. Okay. Why this process is going on? Because of the less amount of oxygen. Okay. What happens? The glucose gets converted into lactic acid. Lactic acid with water with energy. And this energy is also in the smaller amount. We are able to write it here like this. Glucose, because the common thing which is going on here is the glucose. This is the three ways. That is the glucose, breakdown of the glucose is going on in the organ. One is called the aerobic, one is called the anaerobic, and one is called the formation of lactic acid that is in the muscles of humans or the muscles of. This is all about the respiration. What?